yes, this is actually really effective food security programming, this is really effective mental health programming, this is really effective environmental monitoring program, this is really effective restorative justice, these are actually suicide prevention programs.
Tonight, translating data into dollars, some northern groups invest in decolonizing government funding bodies.
The language of choice here is English and Mohawk.
Plus, Quebec strives to protect the French language, but not at our expense, say Indigenous communities trying to protect theirs.
We had that going in, which really helped along the way, right? That kind of mindset, right? And to be successful, you know, to getting to the NHL.
And the defenseman from Big River gets a permanent spot in the Canadian Museum of History. Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. The Thunder Bay Police Services Board announced late this afternoon Police Chief Sylvie Hoff is suspended effective immediately. In a statement, the board says the suspension is a result of the serious allegations brought forward by the Ontario Civilian Police Commission. Earlier today, the Police Services Board held its first meeting since the allegations against the police chief were made public. The police watchdog served Hoth with a notice of hearing for 3 counts of alleged misconduct. Hoth announced she would retire within a year from the embattled Thunder Bay Police Service the same day the allegations came forward. No date has been set for the hearing. The Police Services Board also set in motion the process for finding a new chief of police earlier in the day. Quebec's controversial language bill will be met with an Indigenous language protection bill. At least that's the promise by the province's Indigenous Affairs Minister. However, the Grand Chief of Ganawage is one of the most vocal opponents of Bill 96. She shared her reaction with Amelia Fournier.
Kind of sounds like, you know, it's kind of a last-ditch effort now to appease Indigenous people.
So says Grand Chief Gusanahawe Skydeer of Ganawage, just outside Montreal. She's reacting to Quebec's Indigenous Affairs Minister, Yann Lafrenière, who announced he's putting together an Indigenous Languages Protection Bill leading up to the province's October election.
I'll be working over the next weeks, months with Indigenous communities to build, to prepare a bill that will be protecting and promoting language and culture of First Nations.
I think we were kind of looked at as still, well, there's an Indian problem and we need to, you know, go around them.
But Skydeer says the damage has already been done. English-speaking First Nations and Inuit have been asking for an exemption from Bill 96 since it was introduced.
It's an imposition, and, you know, I keep going back to our history and the way we say that we had treaty relations with people who came across the salt water, and that we would be equal, that, you know, people wouldn't be legislating over our affairs, they wouldn't be trying to control us. And we haven't seen, you know, that kind of coexistence, I'll say.
But minor exceptions have already been made, like hiring 5 new police officers in Akwesasne with Quebec funds.
Because we work in 2 provinces here, Quebec and Ontario, and even if we were in Quebec, we're sovereign. We will hire as we deem necessary. The language of choice here is English and Mohawk.
However, Mohawk concerns over the preservation of Ganyageha go beyond their own communities. They're worried about the effects of the bill when students go to colleges, when they try to work outside of the community or access the justice system.
We're already doing the work, you know, in the community. We have a lot of program and service delivery for those who want to learn the language. We have language nests, we have immersion schools. I mean, all of those could be beefed up in terms of resources. And so I don't necessarily think it's going to help protect externally. Unless, like I said, we have a full exemption.
Despite her reservations, Skydeer, she is willing to consider what the government comes up with.
After we lobbied pretty hard, I'll say, to try to get an exemption or a carve-out from Bill 96, because we felt, you know, our Indigenous languages should be paramount, you know, to us having to learn French. This is, I guess, a step in the right direction.
Amelia Fournier, APTN National News, Ganawage, Quebec.
Plans are moving ahead to build a new residence in South Ottawa. It will be for Inuit people from Nunavut who are in the city for medical appointments. The city's planning committee approved Larga-Baffin's application last week, but as APTN's Fraser Needham reports, the local councillor and some residents remain opposed to the project.
Larga-Baffin wants to build a 350-bed facility in South Ottawa. The proposal calls for amending existing zoning rules to add 2 additional levels to the building. But a number of residents have voiced concerns about potential traffic impacts, changes to the look of the neighborhood, and other social concerns. Local councillor Diane Dean said these concerns are valid at last week's planning committee meeting.
While the merit of this facility is acknowledged, it is not related to the land use planning, zoning, and potential site plan issues that we have focused on. Whether it be an application for Larga-Baffin or a high-rise development in Kitchissippi Ward, it's critical that we allow residents to voice their legitimate planning concerns and not pass judgment or assume they have ulterior motives.
Councillor Scott Moffat sits on the planning committee, and he says resident concerns are largely based on unsubstantiated fears of what the facility is for and who will be using it, rather than legitimate facts.
It's the use, it's the perception of what the use is. There's this belief that if you bring a certain population to your community, that it's going to change your community, that there's going to be higher crime rates, that there's going to be these things. And these are, I mean, just as someone who represents people, it's offensive to hear these things, that they think that just because this one use is going to be in your community, that you're going to have all these negative impacts.
Moffat says it tends to be only certain types of development proposals that face this type of resident pushback, such as applications for group homes or women's shelters.
And I think it's the fear of the unknown. It's a stigma that's attached to certain type of facility, a certain segment of the population. It's wildly unfair. It usually comes from a point of privilege. It usually comes from a point of entitlement, and they are scared of things that they don't know, and they oppose it on that belief. And instead of reaching out and understanding what it is, they just get more embedded into their fear of that, and they don't want that in their community.
Deans had put forward a motion to defer consideration of Larga-Baffin's application until further study on potential impacts could be done, but it was defeated. And the planning committee voted unanimously to move the application forward. It will now go to City Council for a vote on July 6th. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The head of a controversial RCMP unit in British Columbia is denying all misconduct allegations against his squad, and there are many to fend off, according to environmental and Indigenous activists. The Community Industry Response Group, or CIRG, was founded by the RCMP 5 years ago to deal with protests against pipelines, chiefly Coastal GasLink on Wet'suwet'en territory and the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, where the squad has been active against the Tiny House Warriors. But the unit has started clearing the way for other industries too. Its operations against logging blockades at Ferry Creek have landed it in legal hot water. In fact, the squad is now being sued separately in all 3 areas by prominent activists and others they have arrested. But the outfit's commanding officer denies all accusations.
Yes, categorically. The allegations that we're there as an armed part of industry is false. The fact that we collaborate with industry to the detriment of protesters is false. We are there trying to do a very difficult job and maintain our impartiality.
Now, APTN has since received statistics from the RCMP Complaints Commission that show the watchdog received nearly 500 complaints about police operations in these 3 areas, though only 5 have led to disciplinary action so far. And we want to hear what you think about the accusations against the CIRG squad. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. All right, we need to take a short break, but coming up, what's the dollar value of being on the land? Charlotte Moore-Jacobs finds out.
Pretty amazing to meet other people that are doing the monitoring or harvesting or guardian program that they're doing. It's pretty awesome, and it would be nice one of these days to see go to their town and see what kind of they do on a regular basis, or a daily report.
Welcome back to APTN National News. Governor General Mary Simon's first official visit to the Yukon has come to an end. As Sarah Connors tells us, the last days of her visit were focused on art and the importance of Northern education. Here's that story.
My goodness, I know all of that's my cousin.
It's not every day you recognize a familiar face in an art piece, but when you're an Inuk from northern Quebec, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Today, Governor General Mary Simon met with curators for Tether, a new exhibit at the Yukon Arts Centre, featuring more than 50 works by Indigenous artists.
Well, it was a wonderful exhibition, and I would have spent probably all day, going through the gallery.
So one of our most exciting pieces of
art was a common theme during Simon's 3-day visit to the Yukon. She was also the keynote speaker for the Arctic Art Summit in Whitehorse, a conference intended by artists from across the Arctic and circumpolar region.
Artists are reflective of culture. You shine a light on issues that impact our communities every day.
Simon says art is important to cultural identity in the North, especially for Indigenous people.
Art has always been a very important part of Indigenous culture, and it tells our stories and our ways of doing.
Last but not least was a visit with students and faculty at Yukon University, Canada's first university north of 60. Simon learned about the university's Indigenous-led programs and viewed items made by students in the First Nations Arctic Certificate program. She says having a northern university is vital to delivering education with Indigenous values.
For people to be getting, university degree based on that teaching is extremely important.
I'm very proud of this program. I continue to support the program.
Indigenous governance graduate Lisa Hutton says it was an honor to share details of the program with Simon.
I think it was really nice. I think she's very personable. She asked really great questions. She listened to the stories that I think everybody was telling around the room.
Simon's visit to the Yukon wraps up today. It's part of a larger initiative for her to visit each territory and province to meet with everyday Canadians. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
How do you put a dollar sign on the benefits of being on the land? Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs speaks with several organizations in the Northwest Territories looking to report their findings in a way that attracts funders and policymakers. Here's that story.
How many fishes? Indigenous groups in the North know the benefits from having full-time professionals working for their communities. But the reality, colonial governments don't always understand the return on investment, which results in piecemeal funding and no guarantee of longevity for these programs. That's why Northern Harvesters and Guardian Monitors are collaborating on how to improve their data collection and reporting in a way that translates to more territorial and federal dollars.
For the bones in the fish head, they ate so much of it.
Meet the Amungi Monitors, who help protect the lands and water from negative impacts that could happen from increased tourism and climate change from the newly permanent Inuvik to Tuktaaktuk Highway.
We record what we see, the tourism that was coming along the highway. We ended up talking to a lot of tourists in the summertime. I can't remember how many pamphlets we had out the first year, but we ran out of pamphlets because of tourism.
Essentially, they do the jobs of highways, infrastructure, and Department of Lands. Before folks like Lenny Emahawk and Joshua Teddy started in 2018, there was little to no enforcement on fisheries in the area. Now, they're learning from other land-based programs how to streamline their reporting systems.
Pretty amazing to meet other people that are doing the monitoring or harvesting or Guardian program that they're doing. It's pretty awesome, and it would be nice one of these days to see go to their town and see what kind of they do on a regular basis, or a daily report, or.
The 4-day gathering is organized by Make Way, a national not-for-profit aimed at advancing community well-being.
Typically, research or monitoring or education aren't done in these sort of land-based professional capacities, and it's looking at sort of flipping the narrative around, yes, this is actually really effective food security programming, this is really effective mental health programming, this is really effective environmental monitoring program, this is really effective restorative justice, these are actually suicide prevention programs, all that sort of thing. And that's not well understood outside of our communities.
The goal is for Indigenous outdoor programs to better evaluate, calculate, and communicate their return on investment, to shift the status quo on where money and resources are allocated. For instance, Northerners know that the most nutritious food comes from the land and the water, but the biggest federal subsidies like Nutrition North are found in grocery stores and not in local harvesting programs. Local harvesting programs can be found here on the traditional lands of the Yellowknives Dene First Nation, with gathering host and participant Tchinta Bush University. As demand for programs like Tchinta grows, so do the needs for increased funding. Thanks to the gathering, Tchinta plans to create a dashboard of their data available anytime, anywhere.
It is out there on social media, it is on our website, but to have this dashboard showcase all that all year round, any time of the year, we will have those numbers updated daily. And that's what I'm getting excited about, this database. Like, we can see it if we get a call from somebody or a community member or funders, it's already there calculating itself every day that we do the reporting.
Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Mackenzie Island.
All right, we have to step aside for one final break, but still ahead, a new exhibit celebrates the hockey career of Jim Nielsen.
Due to his, he had a challenging upbringing growing up in the orphanage, and that he was able to kind of overcome a lot of obstacles very young in his life to make it to the NHL and have a really long, successful career.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. William and Cheyenne Hudson held their traditional wedding on June 21st in Manitoba on her uncle's property. Oh, what a beautiful photo that is, and congratulations to you both, and thank you so much for sharing that. If you want to be featured as our photo of the day, email your shot to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Over in the east, 24 in Charlottetown and 25 in Halifax. 26 and clear in Happy Valley Goose Bay and 24 and clear in Cartwright. 18 and some rain in Val-d'Or and 26 in Quebec City. 28 in Windsor and 20 in Sault Ste. Marie. 16 degrees in sun in Wawa and 22 in sun in Big Trout Lake. 14 in Churchill and 15 in Puckawagan. Rain and 25 in Dauphin and rain and 23 in Winnipeg. 28 in Estevan and 22 in North Battleford. 21 in Buffalo Narrows and 16 in Stony Rapids. In the west, 23 and rain in High Level and 26 in Peace River. Rain and 19 in Edmonton and 20 in rain in Calgary. 15 degrees and some rain in Tofino, and 21 in Bella Coola. Some showers and 17 in Sandspit and 24 in Dease Lake. 25 degrees in Beaver Creek and 20 in Rock River. 24 in Norman Wells and 19 in Yellowknife. 22 in Fort McPherson and 20 in Inuvik. 11 degrees in Cambridge Bay and 9 in Baker Lake. 8 degrees in Resolute and 11 in Iqaluit. He was a Cree hockey player who had a long career in the NHL. Now he is being recognized for his accomplishments. The Canadian Museum of History is honoring the late Jim Nielsen's journey. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
These skates and hockey gloves are on display in the lobby of the Canadian Museum of History. It's a small collection donated by Jim Nielsen's family. Nielsen's daughter says it's an inspirational story to share.
Due to his, he had a challenging upbringing growing up in the orphanage, and that he was able to kind of overcome a lot of obstacles very young in his life to make it to the NHL and have a really long, successful career.
Nielsen hailed from Big River, Saskatchewan, and managed to enjoy a 17-year hockey career as a stay-at-home defenseman. That began with the New York Rangers in 1963 and wrapped up in 1979 with the WHA Edmonton Oilers. Nielsen's son David says it was his dad's passion for the sport that pushed him to succeed.
I think he had that going in, which really helped along the way, right? That kind of mindset, right? And to be successful, to getting to the NHL. I don't know if Dad had it all worked out in his head or anything like that, what was going to happen, how could you? But once it happened, he had the smarts to, have that kind of mindset, right? That really suits pro sports.
According to the museum's curator of sport and leisure, it's a journey and legacy worth being told.
When we think about sports and Indigenous people, and even sports in general, often people think about famous first and the first one, but not those who came in between. And Jim Nielsen's also really unique for having grown up in an orphanage and not a residential school, and yet in his story we can see threads of racism and the challenges he encountered as an Indigenous hockey player.
The collection will be on display here at the museum until October 1st. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Gatineau.
The Manitoba Arts Council has announced the winner of this year's Award of Distinction. The award is given every 2 years to an arts professional in recognition of the highest level of artistic excellence in Manitoba. Dana Warren, spent the last decade as director and curator for Urban Shaman Art Gallery in Winnipeg, supporting Indigenous artists. Originally from Montana First Nation in Alberta, Warren has curated a number of exhibitions and programs for organizations across Canada, including the National Gallery of Canada and the Gimli Film Festival's Indigenous Horror Focus program. The award comes with a $30,000 prize.
It was so incredible and such an honor. So I'm coming off the heels of Alan Gray Eyes, who received it before I did. So I think that's a huge honor because he is so well known and does so much incredible work in Winnipeg.
All right, that's all we have for you tonight on APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us and have a great night.